Not content with your content? You've come to the right place. The Discontent Show with Joe Kuzma. Every brand starts with a story. Here's how you can grow your business by sharing it. Now, with today's topic, the host of The Discontent Show, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Discontent Show. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am here with all of your answers to your questions about content marketing. If you're asking me, what is content marketing? I have my 5 pillars, and today I'm going to knock another one of those pillars down. Just recently talked about email marketing, something I don't always touch upon a lot in the show. It seems like a lot of times I'm focused on websites and blogs and social media, and those things really dominate a lot of content marketing, but one that's really hot this day and age. And if you're thinking about it heading into the new year, you got to think about podcasting. And I know it sounds incredibly daunting. It sounds like something that's not for everyone, and that might be true. But if you've been thinking to yourself that you have a topic, something you've researched that even if there is some competition in it, but people are searching for it, sometimes people like to hear differing opinions. So you don't want to shut yourself down and totally disregard podcasting because it is hot. And one quick tidbit on podcasting, if you're on the fence here and you're thinking about it, when you have a blog, people read and they read in short spurts. Maybe the average time is 3 minutes, I believe, on being able to read a blog post or how much someone will read of a blog post. If it's too long, they're off to the next thing. They're scrolling, they're clicking, they're tapping with their fingers and thumbs on their smartphones in this day and age, and they're gone. But podcasting is the holy grail of some very long tail type of content stuff that, you know what, you're going to listen to me a lot longer than your eyes are going to read. And a lot of that has to do with people's free time because, you know what, you're cutting grass, you're shoveling snow, you're doing dishes, and you got a set of headphones on. You're in the car, you're in the office, you have some free time. You need something as background noise. We all used to do this listening to the radio long before podcasts and the internet was a thing, even internet radio being a thing. Think about how much you listen to stuff like that. So you want to get involved with podcasting if you feel that you have the ability and the time. Of course, time is always the enemy. I have some shows about being efficient, being effective, better organizing yourself and utilizing your time if you go back into the archives of this Discontent Show. And the reason you're really here is because you're not content with your content, you're not content with your new or digital marketing efforts, and you want to figure out ways to improve. And one of these things, believe it or not, is just getting on a new platform, getting into podcasting and doing an audio format program, much like you're listening to me speak to you here today. And I do welcome back all of the returning listeners, welcome all the new listeners. As we dive into this, you're probably wondering, where do I begin with a podcast? Well, hopefully you have a topic. You're thinking about show names and cover art and stuff of that nature. But what I really want to talk to you about today is just nuts and bolts. How do I do this, Joe? How do I record myself, my voice, not sound like, completely foolish, and get it out somewhere where people can listen to it? And it's not as difficult as you might think, and there's not a whole lot of startup costs that are really involved with it, depending on your technical expertise. I mean, myself, with self-hosting my own websites and things of that nature, I have the ability to just throw some files here or there, use specific software that it gets picked up by the big guys like in iTunes or something like that. I also know of people who just throw their shows just right up on YouTube, and it's just maybe audio. Maybe they use a webcam and they do kind of a video blog, like a vlog as we call it, or a video podcast. Those are things that as well, a video podcast. But we're talking about just recording your voice and getting it out there. And if you're thinking about, you got all these things in the world I tend to think of, people go out and buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, or, you're paying for Netflix or a Hulu subscription. I think this is something that's a very minimal investment in yourself. And if you're not recording very long shows, or you're not doing it every day, you're not going to incur a whole lot of startup costs looking at a host. But you got to find somewhere to save your files at first. That's the first thing you got to find and fit into your budget, because the other things, believe it or not, maybe free, cheap, easy, maybe even laying around the house, believe it or not. Get into that in one moment. That's the actual hardware. Software end of it, you need somewhere to put this up on the web. YouTube is video. Don't make any mistake about it. There are ways to convert just audio files to video and get it up there and things of that nature. It's not going to help you get on iTunes. It's just literally YouTube. There are services, though. Many of them that are out there, like Libsyn or Spreaker, anything of that nature. Now, SoundCloud was in a little bit of trouble financially, and I'm always a proponent of owning your own content, having it somewhere, and not having someone else control it. But you may need help here, and in the terms of help, there are many of these different apps, different podcasts, hosts or places you could upload your show to. One-stop shops where you can use an app on your iPhone, a laptop, a tablet, whatever it might be, and you could record using the app. Type in your title, type in a little bit of a description, maybe some tags, and just upload it straight to that specific website. I already mentioned a few of them, such as Spreaker. And you know what? I use Spreaker as well, but Spreaker has some free services. They also have some paid services. You got to find out what's going to best fit you. And if you speak for a very long time, as I'm prone to do, the more minutes that you upload, the more it's going to cost. Keep that in mind as well. It's just the files are larger, so you got to pay for more storage space. I mean, that's very, very simple math, and I hope that makes sense. None of that should deter you, though, from starting a podcast, because, I think some of these basic plans are $5 or $6 a month, depending on what you're looking at. That's half the price of what like a Netflix is these days. And even if you get yourself a fancy cup of coffee, you're already there. Cut one out, maybe. If you're a smoker, that's something that I know that my uncle used to do, my dad used to do, and no longer do. An expensive habit, but there you go. Just forego a pack of cigarettes as well. When you think of it in those type of terms, you're going to come out, cheap and easy on this end. And there you go. But what do we actually do after we find the place where you want to save your podcast, upload it to? You're going to sign up for these accounts, and they're going to give you the ability to possibly put that into other directories, with the big one being iTunes, of course. iTunes was pretty much, I don't want to say the advent of the whole podcasting type of deal, but just by the nature of being able to play music and audio files on iPods and iPhones and whatnot, the podcast scene really blew up with the advent of iTunes. So that's one of the biggest search engines in the world too that you want to get on. If you happen to be on something like Spreaker that you pay for, they might be part of one of their paid plans, and depending on which tier you're on, but you can maybe even share that beyond iTunes and over to places like a YouTube. iHeartRadio's getting into big on podcast, as is Spotify. And there are ways to also take what's called your feed and submit them to some of these other places, such as Stitcher, such as TuneIn Radio, et cetera, et cetera. There's also, I don't want to be remiss and forget about all of you folks that are on an Android platform and use the Google stuff. Still not quite fleshed out, but it went from like Google Play Music over to Google Podcasts. They changed the name of it like every 6 months. So, but right now it's Google Podcasts, and if you happen to have a feed, it's supposed to find it, magically on the internet some ways, and there's ways of submitting it and doing things of that nature too. And if you're not doing this all by yourself and you end up with one of these services that will do a lot of that stuff for you, so you don't even have to worry about that in that regard. So now we're over that mental mind block. You signed up for one of these services, and now it's easy. Now you might have an app, but if you don't have an app, and they don't provide an app, don't worry. A lot of this stuff you can find if you're on a computer, PC, even a Mac, I believe maybe even Linux. I'll have to double check on this. But there's great software called Audacity. It looks very daunting to start, but if you just mess around with the very basics, there's a record button, there's a stop button, there's a play button. You save a file, you export a file. That's it. That's all it takes. But of course, you're going to have to, if you don't have a built-in microphone on that particular computer, you're going to have to plug something in, and you might need something that's USB. You might get something that's even, you go with your traditional microphone connections, and you're looking around at everything. It sounds a little weak or whatever. There's a lot of advanced setups. If you want to go real dirt cheap and easy, beyond like Audacity's free software, like I said, for a PC and a Mac. But if you don't necessarily have just a microphone laying around, if you have these earbuds, I mean, they're like $10 now. You can get these earbuds that have the microphone built into them. If you didn't realize that volume control, if you have a set of headphones on right now, usually it's on the right earbud, and you take your hand down the right side of your cord, and you have that plus and minus for your, turn the volume up, turn the volume down. In the middle of that's usually kind of like a play pause button, but there's also like this little tiny hole. It looks like somebody took a needle and put it through. You probably have a microphone built in, and guess what? That's going to be better than using a speakerphone or even just talking into an actual smartphone if you go to record that way. And a lot of times these earbuds, you'll have to test this. It depends on your particular, model of computer. But if you plug it into, there's usually, if it's a laptop, it might be a combination like headphone and microphone jack. Some of them have those broken out where it's either one or the other. That's going to be your trial or error. But once you figure that out, I mean, we're talking it takes you once or twice to get that down, and boom, you're off to the races. Now, is it perfect? No, nothing's ever perfect. Even where I record isn't perfect, but there's some certain things that you could set up and do to make your recordings sound a lot more professional. I think that using earbuds helps a lot. And if you have the ability to just do this with let's say you're trying to do this with a smartphone or tablet, there's a lot of stuff out there. If you're on iOS, the Apple devices, there's GarageBand that might be a little bit above like your pay grade here. If you're looking, but it's free. If you're looking, there's I know that Sony has some software that's free that you could get on different smart devices, and I have an entire article that's over on the website, my website, joekuzma.com, that talks about some of the best free and cheap or free software that you could use for podcasting. Now, of course, there's the paid stuff too, like, the Adobe Creative Cloud, where you have Adobe Audition and you pay a monthly service for that. I'm not saying that you have to go out there and do all of that. That's some professional level stuff. You don't have to worry, hopefully, unless you do a lot of coughing, a lot of whatever. There's a certain amount of when you record that could be forgivable. I do a lot of uhs and stutters sometimes, smack your lips, things like that. But try, with practice, that stuff's going to come. Don't worry about editing all these things out now. You don't need the top-of-the-line software to do that. Hopefully what you can do is do this in like one or two shots. Sometimes you may need the software like an Audacity to string them together. But if you do it from a smartphone, you do it in one shot. There's a lot of good software out there where you could just hit a record button and go. And check out the website. I'm going to try and put this in the show notes so you guys have it, and then that way you'll be able to see some of the software. So I just don't tell you about it and then you forget about it. You'll be able to click on the links and get that. So you got the software down on a way to record. A lot of times the software, once you do that, it gives you the ability to save the file. And if you're on a phone, you're like, well, how do I get this file up to the service that I'm paying for? Because if the service doesn't have an app and ways for you to just record and automatically upload into their service, you got to get it there some way, right? Well, this is where something like Dropbox or even emailing the file, if it isn't too big, usually if it comes from a smartphone, it's not going to be. So it's not the highest audio quality, but it's not the end of the world. And remember, this is how to start a podcast on a very low budget, a $0 budget almost, in fact. And this is one way of doing this. Like I said, earbuds, some free software, find yourself a low-cost provider, and, you could use YouTube. You might get lost in the shuffle. You may lose some of your momentum there, and because it's just it's a tough nut to crack at first. You have to be consistent. You have to have a plan. If you go out and think you're going to record podcasts daily and this isn't part of what you do 24/7, let's say you have like a real job and real life and this is just a hobby or it's an aside, it's a content marketing thing aside from your business or brand, or it's a side hustle that you're doing in addition to your regular job that you're trying to get off the ground, make sure it fits in with your own schedule. I talked about doing, a content calendar a few episodes ago. You're going to want to go back and check that for some ideas on how to organize this stuff. Just one last thing that's a really quick tip is where you record at. And since I'm talking about tablets and smartphones, the location of where you record should be portable. So believe it or not, if you look this up, you search on Google, you search on YouTube, you're going to find out that people who are in the music business, music industry, singers and whatnot, a lot of times they're going to do their demo tapes. They're not tapes anymore, obviously, but it's still like their demo reel. They do it in a closet. And people do this that are road warriors that are traveling, maybe, where you hang up a bunch of clothes and that helps absorb some of the sound. So if you're like in a dining room that has like a lot of these abstract objects and it's very echoey and you have hardwood floors and no carpeting, and pick a room that doesn't have that much echo bounce and sounds like you're talking to someone in a tunnel. And that's going to go a long way towards sounding a lot more professional in your dealings. I'm kind of chuckling right now because I have a specific client in mind. And I know if she's listening to this at this moment, she's going to chuckle as well because she was on the road and one of these new hotel chains went with hardwood floors, and we went to record an episode or a podcast with her for her brand and business. And it was just like echo, 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 echo. So like the one thing it was, we kind of apologize. You're going to hear a lot of bad podcasts out there too. Make sure you go and you listen to some people that might be in your particular niche, in your particular industry, and see if they're good or bad. And some are going to be good. Some are going to be bad. Some are friendly. Some are going to be angry that you're trying to, infringe upon their territory. And that just comes with business. It's the business of business, right? But you got to know what's out there as well because, sometimes first impressions are everything, and if you don't sound clear, your message isn't clear, and the quality isn't at least something that somebody can put on a pair of headphones and not have their ears bleed, you're going to go a long way in this podcasting type of industry. So, and then this is just one of those many pillars where you're building up your content marketing foundation. I hope all of this information was helpful for you. There's a lot I could still cover on podcasting. Of course, I say this almost every episode. I could almost talk forever on any topic. So if you have any other questions that you would like me to field, either on this program or, I could always speak to you via email and work with you, go ahead and visit me over on my website. It's joekuzma.com. Don't forget to subscribe and listen for future content marketing episodes with tips and tricks on how to improve those campaigns and help reach an audience and get your message out there. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I always encourage our listeners, until next time, be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later. Hi folks, this is Joe Kuzma. No, don't worry, you're not hearing things twice. I'm just here to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening to today's show and being a follower and subscriber of the Discontent Podcast. And I want to remind you that if you're interested in more information about all the various things it is that I do, whether it be about this show, content marketing, or you want to ask a question, you may visit me at joekuzma.com. That's JOEKUZMA.com. Or you can follow me as well on Facebook. Make sure you get the page and not the personal profile. Sorry, it's only for friends and family. Also on Twitter at Joe_Kuzma, LinkedIn or Instagram. Also, don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe, whether that be on iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast provider, so you don't miss out on any of the great episodes that we have. Once again, thank you again for your support, and I look forward, as always, to speaking and interacting with each of you again soon.